who should lead whom to do what, when, and what context for the purpose to achieve what outcome. That's really, there is no like leadership qualities, it's all contextual now. And we could get into values memes, I won't tonight, I want to get right to the actual skill sets. But all these questions need to be answered before we can actually talk about leadership and what a leader would need, or who's appropriate to lead. And that's going on in my head all the time. That's why I'm called a geek. Stages, levels, lines, states and types, systems, interiors, and we're going to talk about, obviously the group stuff and interior stuff tonight, and we'll get deeper into interior stuff next Wednesday. But so that you know, that's going on in my head all the time, so it doesn't have to be going on in yours. And that's all I'll say about that. So these are the three levels of leadership. Your interior alignment, that's the deepest, but it also ripples out more. Your personal connection, which is the stuff we'll talk about tonight. And then your public efficacy, which will be useful to you. I'll review the material from last time, and then we'll go into how that would be, how you can apply that. But anything tonight will also be useful for you as well. This is really what we're going to go into deep next week, but again, this is a review from last week. Interpersonal communication, intrapersonal, meaning how you talk to yourself, how you communicate with yourself, your thoughts, all that, is inner alignment. And that radiates out to all levels, really. And presence, which will, again, this is what we'll get into next week, but we'll touch on it tonight. What is presence? Well, presence is essentially you being right with yourself. True self-acceptance. Being authentic, free from self-doubt or internal chatter. Do you ever talk to yourself? Okay, good. The voices in your head, we can actually alter them so that they're positive. A lot of people have negative self-talk. Like anything else, we can actually change that, because if you're not in control of your mind, who is? And then tonight, where our focus is empathy, rapport, and more importantly, your ability to have people feel like they're the most important person in the room. If they think that you think that you're more important than them, then they're immediately they're either gonna not like you, or they're gonna feel less than, which has them not be their full selves. And that's problematic as well. Certainly doesn't build rapport and connection. So here's the tips I gave last week. No one knows how it's supposed to go but you. That's the first tip. Like, people go, oh, what if I mess up? Nobody actually knows. Nobody knows if you mess up. There are things all the time I go, oh gosh, I was supposed to say that or do that, or I should have done this, or I should have put that in there. Nobody actually knows though. And people, I kid you not, people get value from the strangest things. They go, that one thing you said, oh, that made a huge difference. And in my head I'm going, that one thing? Out of all the things I thought were going to make an impact. So you also never know what they're going to get value from, but they will get value as long as you're being you, as long as you're actually coming from wanting to deliver value to everybody. And often sensation, the jitters that you feel aren't actually jitters at all. They're actually just an adrenaline pump. I've never had to go to the hospital and got a shot of epinephrine, but well, actually I did. I went to the dentist and I felt my heart rate increase. And, was there epinephrine in that? And they said, yeah, it actually reduces bleeding. And I said, yeah, can I get the Novocaine without the epinephrine? I don't need a speed shot as well, thanks. But often we misinterpret that, when really it's just your body preparing you for action. And then we talked about spatial anchoring, analog marking, throwing away your text, really just working for bullet points. Harrison Shepard was my first client 20-some odd years ago. He used to speak to bar associations, and he would speak from fully prepared text. And very few people do that anymore. I think everybody knows not to do that. But I gave him one 3x5 card. He snuck in two others. But he was, mid-60s, and suddenly like a child in the audience, like a boy, like just down actually in the middle, interacting. And so instead of relating to the podium, and like this, just reading from the lectern, and he would get horrible scores. He got 4.5 out of 5 stars on average from the entire group. It was about 200 people in the room. Lawyers, so not the best crowd, not the easiest crowd. We talked about the 4 learning types and how to structure your talk.
What do you mean by spatial anchoring?
Sure. So I kept talking about last time over here, right, which is my past. Now, if I was really sharp, I would have talked about your past, because most people have to left to right orientation, right? Your left to your right. But also, if I keep motioning to that one time over there, or actually, here's spatial anchoring. And analog marking. Should start with that. You can actually see the walls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or feel them. So spatial anchoring would be creating an association with a certain place over and over again. You already have past, present, future basically ingrained in yourself. And so I'm just tapping on those anchors. About half the population, the future's in front of them, like they talk about putting things behind them,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually motion back there. So that's one way. You can't really do that in this orientation way, but everybody gets left to right. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Does that
Got
answer
it.
the
Yes.
question? Great.
Yes.
Thanks for a great question. For learning types, it's different for pitching investors, and I can send you I sent you the stuff. Did you get a chance to review that?
I went over a lot of it.
Yeah.
I'm still finishing business plan, so.
They're raw notes from a talk I went to, but it actually tapped all the stuff I've been reading. Basically, you throw it on its head, story, team, like that. If it's actually a pitch deck for investors. I don't know what Startup Weekend's like, but if all tell a story first that talks about a problem and a solution that people can relate to. Not, here's what we're doing, and here's the tech behind it, and here's the...
You have 1 minute.
Yeah.
1 minute, yeah, for the initial.
Tell a
And then the
story
5
that's
minute.
relatable, that talks about a problem, and then offers a solution, and then talk about the team and why you can be successful. If I had 1 minute, that's what I would do.
If you had 1 minute, what would you do? What
That.
would you do? What would
That.
you?
I would tell a story that talks about a problem
Uh-huh.
and offers a solution through your product, and then I would talk about the team and why it's going to be successful. Because investors actually invest in the team.
Mm-hmm.
And most people put the team at the back of the pitch deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's a mistake. And really, I interviewed a few guys because I've designed a pitch deck for a new kind of holistic healthcare company tied into a new kind of bank. It's a very interesting project. And I talked to a few, C-level guys who are volunteering their time, kind of like Mentor Week here, but
Uh-huh.
they've been in the business for 30 years. And I said, how much time do I have? And they said, first of all, no more than 10 slides ever, and you've got about 30 seconds. That's why a minute is so great. You've got 30 seconds for me to be interested in knowing more, and then I can look at a longer pitch deck. But you really have 30 seconds to tell the story, and then 10 to talk about the team or 20 to talk about the team. There's a great series of articles, by the way, that sort of dovetails with that, and that is that the bio's dead. They want to know your story.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just Google, the bio is dead. I had a client who he kept submitting resumes, and he wasn't getting a job, and he was a brilliant guy. I said, show me your resumes. And I looked at him and yawned. Even HR would fall asleep. Tell me what results you produced at every place. First write a fun cover page that weaves in the values of the company. I used heart set in the post to Geekdom. I sort of reintroducing myself. That's on their About Us page. I just made sure I read their page, saw what their values were, wove those into it. And we'll talk about values and why it's important. But if you're teaching something, these are the cycles you go through. What we're going to talk about, why it's important, why you should care, how, which is steps or an exercise, and what if. Just imagine what it would be like if this was in your daily life, this product or service or whatever or skill that we'll talk about tonight.
Can you give us a quick example of that? wanna get it ingrained in me, I wanna hear
Yes.
more examples.
Yes. So what we're going to talk about is this pen. And why you should care is because this could transform your writing experience. It could absolutely revolutionize your writing experience. And how it does that is, first of all, it's hand carved. It's got wood grain, and when you feel it, when you actually give you a kinesthetic experience, when you write with it, you'll understand right away. Takes you a minute to calibrate, but it works. You know those receipts? Go ahead and write something. You know those receipts that the ballpoint pens don't work on? Point it up a little bit. Yeah, there you go. Or, oh boy. Little learning curve. But just imagine what it'll be like to never have to like ask for another pen because of that, that slight glossy sheen on receipts. I always pull this one out. Plus, it gives clients a different experience when you hand them this to sign a contract versus a ballpoint pen. So just imagine like the quality of experience they'll have and your own your own aesthetic experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. How is often steps though, or exercises, and so you'll see that in a minute. You'll actually see, because I'll stay true to form on this one. So that's last week. And here's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're talking about rapport, attention, presence, values and vision, and if we have time, values is conflict resolution, or a diffuser, and speaking to the underlying emotions. Oh wait, sorry, that's for later, maybe. Is it Imager? No? Maybe you. Imager? IMGUR? Memes? All right, forget it.
But I mean, I'm
Young,
familiar with the field.
maybe the
This is
20-year-olds
fun.
in the,
This is
yeah.
fun.
So the problem of rapport is, people are, well, gosh, I have kids. Do you have kids? No, I don't have any kids. Okay, well, are you married? No, I'm divorced. Ah. Well, which, did you go to UT? No, I went to college in, Oregon or wherever. And so you end up going, okay, just sort of misfiring, right? But none of this is actually important. And that's sort of luck, it's roll of the dice. But it's not what actually has people feel comfortable or has them build a rapport with you or feel rapport. And so what do you do in these situations? First, let's just define rapport. It's a sense of harmony, recognition, acceptance. People are at ease with one another. Communication is just sort of flowing easily. And when you're in rapport with someone, the similarities between us are emphasized and the differences, you don't care so much about it. You ever had that person that you really liked them, and so they made some mistakes, but you're like, oh, well, And then other people, they're really good, but you didn't like them, you're like sort of nitpicking at them. And they were actually better than the person you liked, but you'd rather refer people to the person you like, right? Or rather go out to dinner with them, or even though they're not as smart or whatever. That's all a function of rapport. Here's some examples, because none of this happens, right? It all happens naturally. So really the question is, how do we just accelerate it or reverse engineer it? Have you ever been someplace and picked up the accent? How long did it take you?
Maybe a couple days.
Right. Yourself? Or, yeah. How long?
Not long.
My grandparents were from Arkansas. It took me 12 hours. Right. And they said, where are you from? I can't quite place it. It seems like you're from here, but... friends finishing each other's sentences. Here's an interesting one. When you're driving and the car speeds up next to you, and you slow down, and they slow down, you get annoyed. It's really because you're already in the same sitting position, which will make sense in a minute. And often it's a car at the same level as you. And it's not like if you're driving a van, that doesn't usually happen. It's a similar size, and because you're in the same position. We'll talk about why that's important. So this is, in essence, this is rapport. Matching, and then pacing, which is matching through time, and then leading. So I had a guy one time, I said, when you're leading, you shouldn't be wearing that. He had this he liked Hawaiian shirts. So, maybe day 2. Don't start with day 1. He said, well, aren't we supposed to be changing people's lives, expanding? I said, sure, but you have to enter it first. Right? You have to enter their world first. And then you can expand, then you can lead. Or as I often make the mistake of lead, oh crap, I have to back up, match, trace, which is my experience in San Antonio. So what do we match? What do we match through time? I don't know if you've noticed or not, but I've been noticing our hands. So your thumbs have been sort of, and I've been doing that for about 2 minutes. So I did that so that you would have an example. Oh, that's right. So here's what we match. There's the verbal, which would be predicates, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. So if somebody says, I see your point, and you say, well, I'm not sure you're hearing me. Well, that's often because you're speaking different languages. So if they say, do you see my point? And you say, yes, I see your point. And that builds rapport. And often, by the way, those people speak really fast. They'll be looking up. We won't get into eye-accessing cues, but when somebody's looking up, they're visualizing. If they're looking left and right on the horizon, they're hearing something. If they're feeling, they're going to be looking down into their body. The whole world is that way. I think there's a small community in the Caucasus Mountains where it's flipped left to right because one's visual recall and one's visual create.
Okay. Can you say that again?
Sure.
Visual?
So up in either direction is visual, like if they're looking up, they're visualizing. They're seeing a picture or they're creating a picture.
Okay.
If their eyes are going left to right on the horizon, so they're looking straight ahead, but they're looking towards their ears essentially, they're hearing something or creating essentially a mind recording of you if they're creating something. And if they're looking down, it's either internal dialogue, like they're talking to those, or they're feeling something. Usually it's a combination of both. So when I work with clients, and I say, how do you feel about that? And they do this. I go, yeah, no, it's down there. And they go, oh, right, thanks. Like, I can't feel anything. I don't know why. I go, it's down there. Or if somebody's upset, I have them look up. And they instantly feel a little bit better. It's very short term, by the way. That's not a permanent fix. But you can get somebody to, like, keep your chin up. That's a real thing. It's a real thing. So you can actually change your state just by, if you're feeling crappy. First of all, I recommend skipping. Nobody can stay sad while they're skipping. I've linked arms and taken adults right out to the sidewalk here and, feeling down? Let's go skip. It's a blast. You have to be a very experienced skipper to keep a straight face while you're skipping. Clinically depressed people will giggle. Maybe just for those 30 seconds, but
So do you mirror the person that you're talking to?
Yes. Yes.
So if I was talking to you and you were standing there and you had your arms crossed, would I cross my arms?
Correct. Yes. Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, nobody knows, and besides, you're just trying to be a better communicator. The question of, I'll talk about ethics, by the way, in this as well, because I have a very bright line with ethics, because these are very powerful tools of influence. So you want to be doing it to be of service. You want to be able to do it to actually create a better relationship. And to me, there's a very bright line about when to go about that. But yeah, you're actually trying to get a deeper sense of them. It's just nonverbal communication.
So when you're if you were sitting here and all of a sudden you lean back.
Yeah, I would as well. Yeah, or you would as well. Cross the legs, uncross the legs. Yeah.
Because I always thought that when you lean back, it's like a disinteresting. It's like
it might be, but it doesn't matter. If you lean back too, they go, oh, they get me. And it doesn't always mean that. It might mean that their back was sore. So we have to be cautious about interpreting those things. For a while, it was like, oh, if they visual create instead of visual remember, and when you ask them a question, like your teenager, maybe they're lying. Maybe they just didn't have a visual memory yet of the thing, and they have to create one. So it's absolutely not useful as a lie detector thing with teenagers, by the way, for those of you who there's all these stories about how the CIA used it. I'm like, that's totally ineffective. Maybe 50-50, which is where you started at. So, why add in? But it might mean that. Some people think about this as being closed. Maybe they're cold. Really. So I would be cautious about that. Some of the indigenous cultures, they talk about this as being closed. Like you're supposed to stand like this, like hands in. Like, maybe this is weird to me. You know, like to me this is respectful. To them it's actually semi-aggressive. And you talk to Polynesian cultures, and I'm talking about corporate trainers who are Polynesian. They view this as negative. It's, you know, it's their version of this, but it's not necessarily. But you just match it anyway. One of my mentors, she would do phone consulting for Diners Club. At the time, their customer service department was just bleeding money, and they viewed it as a net negative. She went in and did some phone rapport coaching with them, and people would call angry. And they go, "God, I can't believe it! Oh, you're absolutely right. That's terrible. Now, what can we do for you?" So they agree with them, like be in rapport with them verbally, same voice tone, same inflection, same volume, but then they would lead them somewhere. "You're absolutely right. We completely screwed up. How can we make it right?" Like that. Turned it into a net revenue generator. Like they would always upsell them. So they ended up becoming a profit center just by doing this stuff. So you guys see all this, right? So let's do an exercise. There's two of you. It requires two people. It's perfect.
Okay.
So here's the exercise. First, go ahead and get closer to each other.
Okay.
And the exercise is. Well, we have you. Go ahead. Or you can both move down there. Whatever you want to do. But it's useful if you sit closer to each other. And what you're going to do is you're going to match physically and with the volume of your voice, but disagree verbally. So if they cross their arms, you cross your arms. If they cross their legs, you cross. If they open, you open. If they lean back, you lean back. Match their voice tone and volume, but disagree with everything they say. I completely disagree with you.
So disagree, but match their
but
body.
match non-verbally. So verbally disagree.
Okay.
Like, I think that's crazy. Like, Amanda, why don't you say something? Anything.
Okay.
I think we should eat all steak every day.
Just disagree with it. Just say, if you're not vegan, you're a murderer. But say it with the same voice tone.
Yeah. If you're not vegan, you're a murderer.
I don't agree. I think that if we kill some cows, less overpopulation. If we had too many, it would just override us. Huge. We have to eat all the meat. Save the veggies and feed the cows.
But, with all of the elements that we're using to feed all these cows that we're eating, that is taking up like half of our energy consumption globally, so.
Right. I get that.
Okay, so let's stop, pause there. Now what you're going to do is you're going to see how that happened naturally. Just cross your. It didn't look manufactured at all. You naturally crossed your legs now, right? Right after.
Right after she did it.
Yeah. So one of you stand up, and now that the exercise is, you're going to agree with everything they say, but mismatch them non-verbally. So stand over her, or like tap your foot rapidly, but agree with everything she says. So you just talk about anything. You're going to agree. Well, one of you needs. I love your desire to be in rapport. So one of you, yeah. So you stay seated, and agree with everything she said, no matter what.
Okay.
And then tell me, and then report your experience.
Okay. No, you're completely right. I was wrong. Like cows, we shouldn't eat them. Maybe sometimes, but vegetables. I see what you're saying.
And wait.
You just keep saying stuff. She'll agree with you, and notice
Okay.
how it feels in your body.
Okay.
Talk about politics. That's
Yeah. Yeah. So.
say inflammatory things.
So I'll be inflammatory. I think that we should kick out every single immigrant ever. If you're already here, we'll keep you, but no one else should ever be allowed into our country or even visit our country.
Just agree.
I agree. I think that the white supremacists that did that Charlottesville thing, they were right on this past weekend. I think that,
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
I think that we need to be doing that in every city, every weekend.
Increase your volume.
Everybody should be, marching with their tiki torches and.
No, I agree. We should totally Yeah, okay, that's good.
So what does that feel like?
So,
You're agreeing, she's agreeing, but what did it feel like?
well, it didn't feel sincere, so.
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
But it's awkward not being able to like look
Yeah.
at each other's eyes
Uh-huh.
and.
Yeah, it's weird and awkward.
Mhm.
And people are doing that all the time. They're just not aware, they're in their own experience.
Mhm.
Thank you. By the way, being able to break rapport is just as valuable as being able to establish rapport. You ever had somebody who was just going on and on and on, and you didn't know how to, like, oh my gosh, I feel trapped, and they're like this, they're just drunk, they're looking down, they're completely in their own experience, they're actually in a trance, they're in self-hypnosis. And so here's how you can, would you come up here for a second? So the way to break rapport, if you're just droning on and on, you actually have to touch them. You have to be, so you want to tap them on the shoulder like, oh, hey, and you want to pivot 90 degrees, tap them on the shoulder, and then they break out of it, and you go, oh, you know, I really have to go do a thing. And then you go do the thing. You don't have to say what it is, by the way, either. I have to go do a thing works incredibly well.
Have to go do a thing.
Okay. One more exercise for rapport?
Uh-huh.
This is fun. So you're going to shadow each other. And what I mean by that is you're going to walk around the 7th floor, and whatever, like, pick a person A. Who's A and who's B? How would you be A? You be B? Okay, good. So you're going to walk around. She's going to follow you, and she's going to match all your movements. So if you, like, throw something in the trash can, she throws something in the trash can. If you want to skip, she skips. And do that for 2 minutes, then you switch roles. So you just do what you're doing, and she's going to shadow you. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go for it.
Around here.
I'll see you back here in 4 minutes.
Okay.
I'll let you know when it's 2. I'm sure I'll be able to find you. She sits down, you sit down, like that. Great.
What is it?
Those little pink cakes, I guess it's marshmallow on the inside. I've seen them, I've never eaten them.
Questions, comments?
It was fun. I
Observation.
felt it, but yeah, it was a little awkward because everybody in Geekdom saying hi and having convos with us, and that was kind of hard
What the heck
to
are you doing?
mimic.
Yeah. Questions, comments, observations, reactions?
It was, yeah. Like we had the same experience in the room.
Yeah.
Cause like she sat down in a chair and she still liked this room, and I was like, well, I like this room. And
Yeah.
then, she like turned and she was looking out the window. And then, so I turned and I was looking out the window,
Sure.
Instead of like reaching
Yeah.
for my phone, so.
Yeah. By the way,
So-
it never feels weird for the person you're matching. I've done this a lot. I've done everything from British accents to, there are certain accents that are more trustworthy. Like, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but a lot of infomercial guys are now Australian.
Mhm.
People they're more likable in a strange way. But the point is, nobody ever notices if you're matching their accent. They might ask, I can't quite place your accent. Where are you from? It sounds like. I used to do a British accent all the time, and I'd say, I can't quite place it. And they're actually really tuned to. Americans, by the way, are usually more visual. I see your point. They want to see diagrams.
Mhm.
Chinese, British, they're much more auditory, melodic. Like they can tell. Not only is Chinese, one same word, 5 different inflections or different words that actually has different meanings. People from the UK, they can tell which part of London you're from by your accent, which neighborhood you grew up in. So there's different cultures have different dominant representational systems. Here's another way to look at rapport. Respect, they feel that they are respected as unique and equal with us. This is also part of leadership. It's where the legal match or the legal match sequel guy was failing miserably. He wanted them to know he was superior to them. That's a mistake, especially people giving you money. They might actually know a little bit more about business than you do. You might have a great idea, but recognition is experience that we're recognizing their verbal and nonverbal communication and responding to it. This is something, by the way, that happens in the background. People aren't aware of it unless they know it. But you can notice when when you cross your legs and then they do. That means you have rapport. So you can take that someplace. That's when you can drop in something that expands. They may not disagree with it. By the way, if you say something and they break rapport, you can go or not, and then you reestablish rapport right away. So here's the principle to live by. There's no such thing as a resistant prospect or somebody who didn't hear you, or there's only people who are not flexible with their communication approach. So I could easily have said, some of my trials and tribulations landing in San Antonio from San Francisco. I could easily say, well, they don't get me. Where's all the power then, though? I give it all away. It's out there. And so if I look at it this way, that there's no such thing as somebody who doesn't get me, I just haven't communicated effectively yet. Right? Then I've got all the power. Access to taking responsibility, meaning you're responsible, is your access to power. It's also a great way to build self-esteem. Here's more of it. I'm going to read that to yourself. I don't want to bore you with reading it. This is a principle to live by the way. It's never you're not hearing me. It's always I haven't found a way to communicate it in a way that you can receive it. it forces creativity and flexibility of approach. If when Apollo 13 did its thing, they all threw their hands up, said, well, I guess they're dead now. They're on their own. They would have all died. But we brought them all home safely because they said, well, there must be a way that we haven't thought of yet. Including duct tape and whatever else they used to, right? So here's ethics. Because a lot of people say it's manipulation. First of all, I've been doing this 25 years, and the first 12 was me learning how to masterfully manipulate people. I never did something they didn't want to do, but they never knew why they did it, and they might have wanted to say no, but they always said yes to me. And I had a couple of really great stories about that. You know, it could have been as simple as me wanting my wife to pick me up at the train station unexpectedly, right? She didn't want to do it. I could have taken a cab home. I said, well, I thought you'd like us to spend more time together. How can she say no to that, right? But she resents it because I just leveraged her, right? What did I do? I didn't have her desires in mind, just to relax at home. I had mine. And so when you're in service of the connection, and you know, then I spent the next 12 years learning how to not influence people, which, by the way, you're influencing each other all the time. It's really hard not to influence someone. And so now people, you know, they use me as a safe place to practice saying no, which is not always great, but it's great for them. But it is, you know, giving people choice. So here's the bright line about, you know, it's whose outcomes are you in service of? If you're in service of theirs, then absolutely, and that's with permission. My clients pay me to manipulate them, to manipulate their mind, to adjust their interiors, to have them think in ways that they haven't thought before, right? But I don't have that. There's some implicit permission here, but I asked you if you would come up, not told you to come up, right? I asked you if it was okay. Would you be willing to? It's really important. If you're doing it for yourself, to close a deal, to get the money, to whatever, then it's probably not ethical. And you go back to one of the principles I use in sales, is that you're opening a relationship, you're not closing a deal. It begins when they sign. And the relationship should always, it's a lost art to say, you know, I don't think I can really help you, but I know somebody who can. Or you go to a gas station, you ask for directions. They can't tell you anything. Right? The idea of service. I can't remember where I walked into. It was like a hardware store or something. And they actually told me where to go to get the thing cheaper. And my first thought was, and I said, I'll definitely be back here. Thank you, because I'll remember that for years that you told me. I can't remember what it is now, but you know, for years, I was like, you know, you could. Actually, it was Best Buy. He goes, you know, you don't want to buy this here. And I went back to that store, to that guy, to buy something more expensive because he told me the truth. So, whose outcomes are you in service of? If you're really being of service, and that's what we should be doing. Even if it's, you know, somebody investing in a film because you know it's going to do well, and that helps them. Now, values. All right, talk about all that. Yeah. I can send you these, by the way, if you're interested in the. Let's talk about values. I don't have a slide for this. What do you want more of today?
More of today?
Yeah. Like, what do you want more of? Like anything. It could be more soda. It could be. What do you want more of?
More money.
Okay, great. What's important to you about having money? What does that provide for you? It's more significant. Freedom. Great. So that's a value. Freedom's a value. Some people would say security. Some people would say it's the same thing. I disagree. The person saying, like, is security and freedom the same thing to you? They're related, but no, they're different, right? And so that's a value. The reason we don't have policy papers anymore before an election, policy papers used to be a big thing. That's the how you do it. The last person to put out a policy paper was Al Gore. He put out one. It was roundly picked apart by wonks who didn't, and you know. So what they do is they freedom, security, reform, right? Healthcare means something different to everybody, but they're things we can all agree on. We all want connection, freedom, or at least we wouldn't disagree that they're bad things. Right? We wouldn't say, well, that's silly that you want freedom. That's terrible. Why would you want that? But we might have judgments about money. I don't, but some people would, right? They're like, well, if it's about money, but it's never about money. And so if you chunk up, meaning that you go up to the more abstract, you've reached a value. And then I can talk about how you'll have more freedom in other areas, and I'm matching your values. It's a deeper level of rapport. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Great. Now, if somebody says, I want freedom, and you want to be able to provide that, you say, well, how would you know if you had freedom? Well, I'd be making more money. Okay, great. So for you, the way to get freedom is to make more money, so then I could talk about that in the service of your freedom. Right? Question? I love your soaking it in. It's great. You can do that in any context, by the way. People are never motivated by, so a value is something that you can never measure it. You can't put it in a wheelbarrow. Money, you could. You can smell it. I love smelling money. You can smell it, touch it, you can count it. But freedom, means something different to everybody. Right? For some people, it's having cradle to grave health care, like have that taken care of. For some people, they want to be able to choose their own provider, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for those two people, they both mean freedom, and they're very different ways to bring it about. If you can match people to the level of values, it almost doesn't matter what you do with your body. But you got to be tricky. You have to be good about guessing. Yeah.
So what does it mean? So as long as ecology is intact? What is ecology?
Ecology means good for, like, if I'm doing something ecological, it's good for you,
Mm-hmm.
it's good for the room, it's good for geekdom, it's good for the community, and it's good for the world at large.
Okay.
If it's not, if one of those things break down, it's unecological. Where it gets tricky is if somebody's in a bad job, like they're unfulfilled, and usually it's a value problem. I had a client, she's a microbiologist. Her compensation package was close to $300 in San Francisco. They let her do whatever she wanted. You think it's a dream job, right? Except she was unhappy. She was single too, like had all the money she could want and all the freedom she could want to do whatever she wanted. But two of her primary values were collaboration and create connection, like intimacy, like playfulness. She worked by herself in isolation. Hated it. It doesn't matter how much money she's making because that wasn't important to her. She already had enough freedom and security, but she didn't have collaboration. She didn't feel acknowledged for her work. And those were important things to her. So the way we found her a job that suited her values is we just talked about what was important to her and how that would show up. A lot of people, when they talk about values, like, oh, what's important to you? Freedom. Oh, great, me too. Except maybe not. And this is important in jobs. It's important in relationships. And if you meet somebody, by the way, it's like set first date questions for you, or sometimes pre-date questions. Like, well, what's important to you in relating? What's important to you in a relationship? And if they say, they want a family and they want loyalty, because I'm not going to, if they're wrong, I'm not going to back them. I might not, I'm not going to say they're wrong in front of people maybe, but I'm not going to me, truth is more important than loyalty. But for some people, they want you to back them whether they're wrong or not. You better back them strongly in public. And if you're wrong, if you're being a jerk, I don't care how much I love you, I'm going to be like, hey, you're being a jerk. Right? But for some people, that's incredibly important. I have a truth over comfort principle. So if they're not okay with that, it's just why go past the second date. In a job, you want to also say, what's important to you in a job, and then filter that, like actually use it as a filter. And then how would that show up? So if freedom was important in your job, maybe that means that other people would be handling certain things for you, but maybe it means you're in isolation, you don't have to deal with humans. Right? And so it's just important to find out how it shows up. In terms of conflict resolution, if you can speak to the underlying emotion, somebody's agitated, I can tell you're really frustrated. I go, yeah, it's another way to gain rapport. And if you can guess, well, I can tell because, like people getting you and being understood is really important to you, and you can accurately intuit that, they'll feel more valid and more seen than ever before. So you can actually use it as a conflict resolution, even if they're angry at you. Say, I can tell you're really angry. Yeah, well, thank you. And it's probably because like, let's say I was late and you got upset. I didn't call. We were going to have a business meeting. I'm 10 minutes late. And in my head, as long as this isn't my head, by the way, but in my head, as long as I'm not 15 minutes late, it's okay, right? for me, if I think I might be 3 minutes late, I usually call ahead with. Right? But some people, they have a 20-minute rule or whatever. And you go, I'm really agitated. Oh, thank you. I can tell you're really agitated. Yeah, well, that's probably because integrity and punctuality is really important to you. You go, yeah. And suddenly there's no conflict. Rather than me going, well, I was only 10 minutes late. Right? And doing this thing, which would just break rapport further, then you wouldn't trust my reliability and you'd probably never want to meet with me again. Right? But it's never about us, it's always about the other person. So that's values. You asked about values last time. So that's how to use them for rapport, use them for conflict resolution. There's a high vacancy rate downtown here. San Francisco, it's less than 1%. And I got apartments by asking them what's important to them in a tenant. And usually they would say, you take care of it like your own property. You take ownership. And I'd say, well, thank you, that'll be easy. I've owned 2 homes before. They'll take me over somebody else any day who hasn't owned property. But I needed to ask another guy, he said, take care of it like yourself. And I said, well, how would that show up? He said, whoa. And it was a little garden apartment with a white picket fence underneath there. Right? Beautiful little apartment. He said, well, actually, would you water this one plant every day? It was like a little, like this big in the front. I'd be happy to. He says, the hose is right outside your front door. Nobody ever takes care of that plant. I said, great. I'd love to water that every day. Here's the lease. So in terms of they just understand that you care more because you're asking those questions. And don't ever expect them to answer back, by the way. Yeah.
So, okay, how to build rapport, yes, find their values.
Yes.
But let's say example, so for my tour company, I'm trying to find guides, right?
Right.
I have, I'm finding them, and then people are coming to me and they're like, hey, my buddy made $500 working one of your tours. Like, I totally want to do it. I'm like, cool, tell me about yourself. And I want to hear about their values. And I know what mine are. And theirs is, okay, example. So I want to promote local people, right? If you live here and you operate a business or you have a passion about something, so maybe somebody sends me someone who's like, no, dude, I'm just in town for the weekend and I want to do a tour. Like, I just need to make some quick money or something.
Right.
Okay, that's not a value that I agree with. I know that.
So what's important to you in a tour guide?
Right, so let's say that it becomes clear to me that we don't have the same values, but they're like,
what do you say to them?
People. Yeah, so how's it easier to break rapport?
Yeah.
Let's say we're on the phone, so I can't touch them.
Here's what you say. You say, this just isn't a fit. You seem like a really great person, I really like your energy, and it's just not a fit. And they'll say, well, why not? Because they're going to take it personally. And you say, because it's not a fit. They say, well, what is it? You say, yeah, I understand. And it's just not a fit. And they usually give up after. I've never seen somebody say more than 3 times. Or me have to say it more than 3 times. If you get into, here's why you want to avoid getting into the specifics. If you start telling them why, then they're going to start trying to overcome those objections. And really, it's none of their business, it's just not a fit. And you want to give them as little as possible to take personally. So it's just not a good fit is the cleanest way to say it. If you say, well, we don't have matched values, then they're going to, it's just, well, what are your values? It's just a can of worms. And you can use that in any context, professionally, romantically, and don't add a qualifier on it. It's not a cultural fit or it's not a value. Just say, just not a fit. And just repeat it. You want to give them a little, you seem really great, but there's actually you don't even want to say there's something we're looking for and you're not that. You don't even want to, just say you don't think it's a fit.
So are you doing tours by locals, something like that? I use those in Europe last year. Those were my favorite. I love that. I love that.
But it would be useful for you to actually get clear on the values that you want, like what you want in a tour guide. You probably want them to be empathetic and you want them to care about, San Antonio, I imagine, based on what I've known so far.
Yeah, so live here, have a passion, or a passion, preferably existing business or.
But they can live here and not care about San Antonio.
Exactly. exactly.
So I think caring about, like, it's really about the care, right?
I think it's about caring about people, because I know when I was in Europe, I mean, like, you know, they would be like,
Sure.
you know, I'm gonna meet you at the train station, and I'm gonna be standing, you know, when you get off the train, you're gonna see a big green cross, and I'm gonna be
Right.
standing right under it. They made it so easy,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
for you.
for you is, that's
Mhm.
definitely true. It may be true for her, it may not be, but it'd be useful for you to get clear on the values. Cool. I have a worksheet for it if you want. Cool. So questions, comments, observations? Anything? No? Anything we've covered so far? That's it for today.
You're
We're on
good.
not a good fit, man. It's just so hard because even just breaking
I
up
know.
with somebody, or you know, yes, someone I've
Mhm.
used staffing companies before at other businesses, and
Yeah.
telling that, you know, we have the trial period like the first day, and they're like, so should I show up tomorrow? And
Yeah. I've also used, I'm gonna go in a different direction on this.
okay, that one I like. We're gonna go in a different direction.
Yeah.
The creative, or we're gonna go in a different direction for.
I would
okay.
just different direction. Nobody likes to do it. It helps if, you know, we'll talk about some more intricate interiors next week, but it helps if you don't care if they like you or not, but you can demonstrate care. And by that I don't mean that you're a jerk. By that I mean you don't take it personally if they get upset. I mean, if you don't care if they like you, it gives you a lot of freedom. Because you can't please everybody. You can rarely please one person, let alone everybody. And so your own self-acceptance, once you are internally validated, then you don't, their feelings matter less in terms of your impact, and you still want to be really cautious about caretaking their emotional experience. You need to be empathetic, but also not, you know, they're going to get upset. And if you accept that and it's okay, then you're free. And, you know, people take things personally, the weirdest things.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's on my mind a lot.
Yeah, next week we'll go deep into that. The personal brachial, the quadrant thing. Other questions, comments?
I'm good on all that.
Cool. Is there something else?
I want to hear more about those other two levels of the evolutionary geek that you didn't want to touch on. You're like, nobody's up there. It's like 1%. And I'm like, hey, I want to get there one day.
Yeah. You're talking about coral and turquoise. Yeah, there just isn't. Oh God. Did I talk about why the stages are actually important in terms of marketing today?
No.
Okay. Well, do you mind?
No, and that's what,
All right, let's go into it. People are like, well, why does it even matter? I'm
The
just
last
gonna.
time you used the example, you were talking about like, it's a good thing that George Bush was in at that time with 9/11
Okay.
versus Al Gore, and so you explained like
Because he understood the level
difference, right?
below. Yeah. Let me use it in terms of business and marketing. So I'm only going
this
to
is
talk.
like spiral dynamics.
My gosh. Yeah. So that's this part. The rest is, so this is the integral theory. That's the framework behind everything I do. Yeah, I'm an NLP master practitioner, like neuro-linguistic programming. But this is behind everything. That's like 20% NLP. And NLP, of course, would be in the interior individual, up in the upper left-hand quadrant. Wow, my finger on the, that was weird. Okay. So there's 3 stages worth marketing to. There's only 2 that really matter. And in San Antonio, you've basically got blue, orange, and green. Integral, they don't need you, they'll find you. And plus it's only 1% of the population, yellow. Blue is law and order. It's law and order. It's, you gotta go to church no matter what. It's, family, Christ, Christian Judeo ethics. All legal systems are founded on blue. Orange would be contract law, capitalism, equal rights, the stock market. And then green would essentially be geekdom. Geekdom geekdom, and it's progressive values. It's self outside of self, and usually what happens is, not usually, the nature of evolution is that each stage is born out of the limitations of the one below. So this was lay up your treasures in heaven, and like, well, what about living comfortably here now? So the spiritual, capitalism was born, industrial revolution. By the way, there's also a techno-economic base behind every stage. This was moving from here to here is agriculture. From here to here was industrialization. From here to here is the information age. From here to here is beams of light and I don't know what consciousness. All the population in this country, so the rights, white supremacists, right here, orange, might is right, force to blue, blue is also nationalism and me and my people against the world. So most people you're going to market to, orange has the most money. As they're moving into green, they realize it's not about money, it's about doing good things in the world. And so if you get people right here, plus this is really the mass market. These people, they're going to want stock, they're going to want bonds, not aggressive stocks. They're going to want, they want safe, reliable, things they can count on kind of thing. These people will take more risks. These people care and they want to contribute. So this, also the limitations here are degradation of the environment, and, waste products, and here it's care about that and solving that problem in global warming. Here they're like, well, maybe. Here they'll just be climate deniers, and here they'll be like, well, maybe as long as it doesn't cost us a lot of money. And here they'll be like, well, we have to. The war in Iraq, the first one, yes. Well, not the first one. Saddam Hussein, yeah, red, got to do it with red. We had a blue president, must be stopped, right? Awesome. Orange was like, sure, but hurry up, it'll hurt the stock market. Or they started investing in defense companies, right? Or they started a defense company. And then here they're like, war is never okay, no matter what. They're just misunderstood. They need a hug. Whereas these people view that as weakness and they laugh at them. It's like you can just look at North Korea. They're laughing their asses off at us. As they, well, not now, but they were for 3 presidents. But they have enough blue where they're not going to self-destruct themselves. Red, we mostly just put them in jail. These people do a lot of psychedelics and talk to trees, and these people are in prisons or African Bushmen. They're like day-to-day survival. So, but in terms of marketing, this is all about security, safety, commitment, family, loyalty. This is all about getting skills, producing better, gaining wealth, getting better at things. This is about care, connection, service, community, like that. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And then what's beyond that?
So, turquoise, I don't know why coral's on here because there's not enough data. Coral, by the way, there's a spiral dynamics, there's basically a management, I can't believe it's so great that you know it. There's essentially a management, change management manual that Beck and Cohen wrote. If you want to, and it's dense with, all the qualities and characteristics, like 20 characteristics at the end of every chapter. Also what they need to let go of to move to the next level, and the qualities they exhibit if they're at that stage. And their probabilities, it's like a bubble, like a probability cloud moving up.
But it's like when Gandhi was when he was at a lawyer level, a British lawyer level.
Right.
I mean, he had to let go of a lot to get to where he, to ascend to where he was.
Yeah.
He had to let go of everything.
And I do Vipassana meditation a lot.
Me too.
Really?
I go to the 10-day retreats.
Yeah, I just did my 10th up in
Kaufman.
Yes.
That's where I go.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Well, I wouldn't be on the same side as you because,
Yeah. Well,
Hey,
yeah, exactly.
Wait, no, it silence.
So a lot of people go there, especially my friends from California, and they think they're expecting an integral organization because it's Buddhist, maybe green, right?
Hindu. I thought it was Hindu.
No, it's Buddhist. It's the practice that Gautama the Buddha supposedly taught, like the original practice that was lost for 2,000 years.
Okay.
or so Goenka says,
Right.
or it says on the tape.
Says,
He
yeah,
just died.
he's died.
But it's really a blue organization. Like the rules are the rules. Period. There's no, like the essence of integral is being willing to break the rules in service of a higher purpose. Well, they don't think that. No. I'll give you an example of a blue person. I went to a bank, had my I think I was 22, had my fresh back in the Bay Area, and I had my corporate check, and I had an account there, and I went in, and the company, which was right across the street, also banked there. I said, I'd like to cash this, and they said, well, we can't cash that. Or I said, I'd like to buy a cashier's check with this, and I go, well, you can't buy a cashier's check with that. You have to cash it first. I said, okay, thank you. I'd like to cash this. He gave me the money and said, now I'd like to buy a cashier's check with the money. She wasn't paid, she couldn't think past this. Like, there was a rule. The rules are the rules. She realized how, halfway, when I handed her back the cash, she blushed and realized how silly she was being. Silly is, by the way, code for dumb. I often say silly when I'm dumb. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so I want examples of like integral self and holistic self, and so unitive self. I mean, you just disappear when you become unitive. Like it's just like Lucy, like you activate everything and turn it into pure energy.
Ken Wilber changed the light spectrum, which I'm like, great, another color. But he actually had a clear light. There's enough data to support that this exists. Like, this is theoretical. There's plenty of data to support up to here. This one, they theorize, and I don't even know, I'd have to read it again.
What I've read about the ones that are getting to the top, it's like the, it's like when, it's like in a body when the new, when a new cell is born,
Yeah.
that the body attacks it and kills it. So the new cells that have come at the top, like Jesus, Gandhi,
Sure.
Martin Luther King Jr.,
Sure.
they've been, Abraham Lincoln, they've been killed. They've
Well,
been killed off by the consciousness because they weren't ready, the consciousness wasn't ready for that kind of enlightenment.
Yeah, well, every culture, like, in America, we're lumped right here. Like, you got a little bit here, right? And so the culture pulls you up, but it also can hold you down. If you talk about, like, if you're in a gang, which is a good example of red, and you talk about how there's a lot going on that you could relate to with the other gang, they might just kick your butt. They might just throw you on the ground and start actually kicking you, right? Because you can't talk about how we're all connected. So yes, and the dirty secret is that they may have been thinkers at that stage, but they still created organizations that were not that. Somebody, I think it was Ken Wilber, actually made a joke about Christ being at stage 4, but it was an ego development. You can't make that joke really.
So
but at the time, because they were all here, maybe here, right? Somebody who comes in here, they seem enlightened. And I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm just saying, actually, if you look at them all, they were all saying the same thing. All the great spiritual leaders, they basically say the same thing.
Yeah, so all of those people are integral.
The key component of integral, for the first time, there's this momentous leap, the second tier. You actually appreciate the stages, like their strengths, but can also speak to the limitations. They often call this person the universal donor. It might confuse people, but they feel like, oh yeah, they're all right. And like, well, yeah, I can understand where you're coming from there, and you actually can. I can understand where you're coming from, and I actually can. And can speak to the benefits. I had a good friend who actually owns Integral Boulder, and he said, I just don't understand blue people. I just can't get them, because he was here. I said, well, are you kidding me? They keep the country rolling. They pay the laws, they pay their taxes, they protect our property, they're in uniform, they go to war for us. Come on, hail blue. Like, thank you. I don't want to go to dinner with them, but yeah, and he had this awakening, right? And for me, it was just he was here and couldn't understand the benefits of blue.
Like the blue, the holistic self, I mean, that wasn't even ushered in until like the age of Aquarius, right?
Yeah, well, we really don't. I'm going to stress that this is 1% of the population, and even this is mostly theoretical. This is pure speculation.
So where's like Buddha? They're in the integral,
All I know is all the Buddhist organizations are squarely at blue.
but that's an organization. So the
But
the
because
ones
they're
that
rules.
reach like they let go of everything and they choose to be like
Yeah.
a leader. You know, they sacrifice all this stuff,
They're
give it
at
up.
least an integral. Well, it's not actually sacrifice. 'Cause
Their
they-
choice.
Because they understand that they understand that they're gaining freedom.
Right.
So the essence, I'll speak to sacrifice. The essence of sacrifice is you're actually giving up a higher value for a lower one. So it's not a sacrifice to not buy a pair of shoes so that you can feed your kids. That's not a sacrifice. That's appropriately organized values. So it's tough to say. It was actually said that Karl Rove, while he the architect behind the Bush presidencies, so he was the guy. He was the political consultant. The big egghead that basically got the vote out in churches. But he, actually, George Bush's second, like when he accepted the speech, he said, Karl Rove, the architect. That's all he said. Karl Rove's a turquoise thinker, but his heart's here. So cognitive development or cognitive understanding doesn't equal where you're coming from emotionally. So where you come from emotionally, if you ask somebody how they feel about Christians and capitalists and they start foaming at the mouth, they're squarely at orange. Nothing wrong with that. They just are still at tier one. That means you need to speak to their values, which will be connection, community, environment, collaboration, coming from the heart, like that. Make sense?
Yes.
There aren't good answers for these. They just, I think 1% of the population integral is actually a generous assessment.
So yeah, this is really would be super helpful for me because of all the different kinds of people I'll be working with and coming in contact with, and understanding them better. Yes, connecting on values and stuff, but if I can be quicker to recognize these things, even with my investor meetings.
I call them skillful means. And if you ask them what's important to them and they talk about security and stability, they're going to be here. Or if they talk about profits, they're going to be here. If they're talking about collaboration, connection, doing good in the world, they're probably here. So there's also a great audio product I would recommend. The book is intense and maybe not be good, but if you get Spiral Dynamics Integral by Don Beck, who's actually from Texas. He's a folksy, warm guy, and he talks about all the stages and talks about everything from the naivete, he calls it the green group grope, and how naive they are about the lower stages green. But he goes through and he'll talk about, and you have to go, by the way, we all start here.
Are you a unity minister? Is he a unity minister?
What's
I
the
don't know
name
about
of the
that.
book?
It's not a book, it's an audio product.
What's the
Spiral
first-
Dynamics Integral. And you get it on Amazon for I think I paid $150 for it, but it's like $20 now. Spiral Dynamics Integral by Don Beck. Very approachable. It's like six, I don't know if it's CDs anymore, but it was like 6 or 8 CDs. Fantastic product.
And the book that you were talking about that you said was
Simply Spiral Dynamics. There's probably a subtitle, but that's by Beck and Cowan, C-O-W-A-N. And it will give you skillful means to talking to those people, whoever they are, and understanding their values at a very deep level. And it's just for eggheads like you and me. And you, apparently.
Yeah, because so I wanted to be a psychiatrist. I wanted to be help people in that way. But I was waiting tables and bartending, and I was like, man, I'm their freaking counselor right now, and I don't have to sit in a room all day. So that's how this all started: catering and photography and everything else. So yes, this would help me so much.
There's some theories, by the way, that they're types goes along with it. It'd be masculine green and feminine green, but there's also the mean side and the healthy side, or the unhealthy. Unhealthy orange is not caring about the environment at all. Healthy orange is making sure you take care of your employees so that they don't leave. And you treat them, of course you want to treat them well, and you're in competition with other companies. That's healthy orange. Right? Healthy Orange is wanting to provide value to people, a service that improves their lives, that makes things better. That's Healthy Orange.
So are you going to startup weekend?
I'm planning on it. I was gonna help out one of my friends with he's pitching something. I did last startup weekend. I got
Oh.
second place.
Congratulations!
Yeah, thanks. So my 1 minute pitch, I said my idea is culture in a box.
Mhm.
Local culture carried by local in a box, because I love supporting local. I love finding the cutesy t-shirts and going to their shows, but sometimes it's just hard to